Welcome back to Potions of Processing. I'm your host, Raven White. I'm super excited for this episode because my last one got 200 views on it. That's a pretty big deal for me because I had no idea how soon or how interesting I would be to people. I think when you start making content, you hope for the best, but you assume the worst, which is that no one will find you interesting. So the fact that 200 people watched my video and that brand new people commented and more new people subscribed is pretty amazing. So thank you so much. It gives me a lot of courage to keep telling you my story and to keep sharing. Would I do it regardless? Absolutely, I would, just because it's nice to have it out there. But knowing that people are interested also helps a lot. So thank you again. In my last video, I started talking about the culty things I grew up with, and we're just going to keep rolling with it because I have a lot to say. I want to talk more about what my dynamic looked like as the stepdaughter and also the oldest child. I think my life looked different for a number of reasons. One, because I wasn't his biological child. Two, because my mother did not hold any particular fondness of me. And three, because I was raised as a woman child in a religion that didn't have any kind of boundaries or respect for women or even children, really, if we're being honest. I was raised under this double system of not only was I viewed as a piece of bargaining equipment, belonging, because he was a narcissist, because my parents were both narcissist people, but also because that's how they believed in this religious institute. Abusive narcissistic people will often view other people as bargaining tools, as belongings. And that also coincided with the religious cult that I was raised in. Women and children were belongings. They were not people. They were things that you owned. And then that meant you could do what you wanted with them. I'm going to give you an example of something that my stepfather used to demonstrate that he could do what he wanted whenever he wanted to me when I was a child. When I was between the ages of like 6 and 10, and I am so sorry, but again, memory, he called me into the bathroom, which he was remodeling, and had me lean against the sink, and then he hit me across my backside as hard as he could with a 2x4, which, if you're not familiar, is a piece of wood that is 2 inches across, and it was like 4 feet long, 2x4. If you're into wood, you probably know what I'm talking about. But he hit me with it as hard as he could. I had done nothing wrong. I was minding my own business. Not that I deserved to be hit with a 2x4 if I had done anything wrong. When he was done, he asked me, "Do you know why I did that?" And I said, "No." And he said, "Because I could." This was something he did all of the time to remind me that he could do whatever he wanted, whenever he wanted, because he could, or because God told him that he could, because God gave him that authority, because it was his divine right as my father to punish me and set me on a righteous path so that I would not stray from it and that I would become a good, godly woman when I grew up. And he would often quote, when he disciplined me, the Bible verse about punishing your children so that when they grew up, we would not depart from it. Well, I have news for you. Being the stepdaughter came with this being set aside from everything, literally being stepped apart from everything. I was not viewed like part of the family, not just by him, but by his extended family as well, because they actively made comments around me to make me feel excluded from the family. I wasn't included in things that they would do with my siblings, and I was almost like forced to be part of the package deal, and it was framed in a way of include her so she'll at least watch the children. I became less like family as I got older and more like help person, help maiden, handmaiden, if you will. And as I got older, it was put into my mind that was why I was created. That was why I was put here. That was why I was born and why my dad died so early and why I was introduced into this new situation and why I had so many younger siblings by a different father was so that I could help raise all of these other creations. That was my divine purpose. That was why I was here. I loved my siblings. I loved them with every ounce of my heart. I really, truly did. I did not resent them ever, not once. And I say that with 100% authenticity. In everything that I ever went through and everything that I experienced, every favoritism. I mean, when we were younger, there was some resentment there for sure, especially when I realized that there were favorites and I was not going to be one. There was resentment and jealousy. But as I got older, it just I don't know if I don't know how it happened or where what shifted, but when more of them arrived and it was in pretty quick succession, it just I just adapted really quickly, I guess. I don't really know, but I genuinely loved my siblings and I also became aware really fast that if they're if I wasn't there to take care of them, no one was going to take care of them. And so I just kind of accepted that this was what my circumstances was going to be. I was there to take care of my siblings. And maybe that was what I was created to be. Maybe that was just what my future was. And I was very, very depressed by it. In some of my past videos, I talked about how I wrote a lot of really sad poetry, and that is very true. And I kind of made light of it in that video and joked about kind of being like, an emo teenager. But the truth of it is that I wrote a lot of sad poetry about how depressed I was at the time because I had no sense of self identity. I had no sense of self worth. My whole entire life revolved around taking care of my siblings and around trying to be good enough for my father, for my mother, for my holy father. And I never, ever hit the bar. I was never good enough. And it was a constant reminder that I was never good enough. I was so incredibly lost and I wanted more. I felt this urge that I was made for more. And I was so creative and I was ashamed of those feelings. I was ashamed of a lot of feelings. And around that time, I was really struggling in my identity and my sexuality and who I was as a person. And I don't want to go into that now because I want to talk about all of that in another one because that is a lot to process. But those books of poetry that I have were about being so depressed and so lost and so alone and not having anyone to talk to and not having anywhere to go and wanting to die and hoping that I did not wake up the next day because I did not have anything to live for and I didn't have anywhere to go. And the only place I had to look forward to was heaven because that was the only thing that I was promised. That was the only thing that I had to look forward to. I just did not. I couldn't carry it anymore. I didn't want to carry it anymore. And I was ashamed of it. And I had nowhere to put it except in pages of notebooks of sad poetry and hope that no one found them either because I don't know what would have happened to me if my parents had found that I was writing about not wanting to do all of the things that I was supposed to do or that I was even questioning God's will or my purpose or all of these things that I was supposed to be doing. One thing I had going for me in all of that is that I believed there was something better. I didn't know what that was. I just knew deep down in my soul, I just felt like there had to be something better. And I couldn't put a name to it, couldn't explain to you what it was. I I've learned now that maybe that is intuition, maybe that's your gut feeling. I've learned to lean into that in the present, and it's never been wrong. I have never been wrong since I have, you know, learned to follow that and trust that and believe that in the present. I've never been wrong. It's never let me down. But back then, I didn't know any better. And I didn't have any reason to believe that things were going to change. I had to take a break for a second. Now I can't remember exactly where I was at. So it's a miracle that I am still alive today. Honestly, it's a miracle that I made it out. I hate to feel like this is a filler episode. It kind of feels like a filler episode to me. I hope it doesn't feel that way to you. Things got really dark in my home during this time. And we're going to talk about when the devil started making personal appearances in our home. Now, I don't really believe in a lot of the things that I believed in back then, but I'm going to tell it to you from the perspective of what I had when I lived there, and then I'm going to tell you what I believe now that I'm out of it. And you can make your own judgments based on what you think happened in that home, based on your own perspectives. But I lived a life of horror in that home, and it's been over a decade since I've been out of it, and I can tell you that the horror doesn't leave. I still have nightmares about living in that home. I still have nightmares about getting out of it. I have nightmares about my stepfather and my mother. I have nightmares about being trapped inside my childhood home and not ever being able to get out. And sometimes late at night, after I've been asleep, just if I wake up in the middle of the night, just before I open my eyes, I swear to God, I'm still there. Sometimes when you go through something really terrible and traumatic, a part of you never really leaves it. A part of you is always going to be trapped there. I hope that my nightmares don't transfer into yours, but if they do, just remember, they're not real for you. That's this episode of Potions and Processing. And remember, we may be different species, but we're all part of the same family. So please be kind to yourself, be kind to others, and I will see you next week.